Hi everybody. So last week we fabricated a custom tray utilizing our Mesh Mixer software. Now, for some of you, it might have been a difficult assignment because for me, it was a very difficult assignment. And I've made a few mistakes fabricating that tray. Hopefully, my mistakes were beneficial to you guys and you didn't have to make those same mistakes. Now, this week, we're actually going to be fabricating a Gothic arch tracer. Gothic arch tracers, or sometimes they're referred to as centric bearing devices, I think I pronounced it right, are a wonderful instrument which allows you to capture your patient's centric relation. Let's say, for example, you have an edentulous patient who has been wearing the same denture for 40 plus years. And for some reason, that happens more often than you think. What happens with these type of patients, they will wear down their posterior occlusion and will start biting anteriorly, causing an acquired class 3 occlusion. If you fabricate a new denture with that same occlusion, chances are, not always, but often, these patients will relax and start biting on their posterior teeth instead of their anterior teeth, causing an alligator bite, as they call it. In order to prevent that, we try to fabricate a Gothic arch tracer and capture their actual centric relation. For many years, I have used a Gothic arch tracer that was mounted chairside. You buy a kit, you make your wax rims, and you do it right there when the patient's in the chair, mounting it into the wax. Or if you're utilizing the BPS system, you can do that in the lab as well. Lately, I've been utilizing an option of doing these things digitally. I've created a little setup in Mesh Mixer actually to be able to add those things into my base plates. Now, I didn't create this on my own. I had some help with some friends, but nonetheless, I do have those files and I've been sharing them freely. What we're going to do today is we're actually going to fabricate our patient's mandibular and maxillary tracers utilizing these files. So first of all, we need to create our base plates. How do we do that digitally and make sure that they're in the proper occlusion? Or maybe occlusion is not the right word. If we had the proper occlusion, we didn't need the Gothic arch tracer. We need to make sure they're in proper orientation to each other, or at least vertically. In order to do that, you need to create some kind of bite before you scan the models in. Oftentimes, using a centric tray like this will help. People also use mush bites, just a little bit of silicone in there. Some people will use alginate. There's many different ways to capture an approximation of your maxillary and mandibular relation. Once you get that done, you need to scan it in occlusion into your laboratory scanner or your chairside scanner, whatever you're using. After that is done, there are different softwares that can be used to create base plates. In our case, we've used 3Shape, and I've also showed you how to make it in Mesh Mixer. However, when you're doing it in 3Shape, you can only import one arch at a time to create your base plate. And when you generate the cam output, unless you have a certain option in your control panel deselected, the actual base plate is going to have a different orientation than the model that you just scanned in. So in order not to have that problem, this is what you do. When you finish fabricating your base plate and you're ready to export the file, so usually we right click and go into advanced and we press generate cam output or F7. What that does, it exports the base plate in a different orientation. So in order not to have that happen, instead of generating the cam output, you should press export visualization output. When you open up that folder, you will have your base plate file be in the same position as the scanned in model. Okay? So once you do that, you can open up both files in Mesh Mixer, and there they are. I've created this for our patient. We have our maxillary mandibular base plates, which are in proper vertical dimension or within range. And now we're going to attach our Gothic arch tracers for our maxilla and our mandible. Let me show you how to get this done. So the first thing we're going to do is actually import our parts for Gothic arch tracers. So if we click import, we have our Gothic tracer folder and we have all three of our parts. So I'm going to select them and click enter. So it's bringing all three portions in. And you see that all three of them are selected, but they're kind of aligned a little bit weird. So right now we have our upper part, which is the plate, we have our lower part, and we have our screw. Okay. What do we need to do first? In order for us to be able to use these things continuously and not having to pull up that file every single time, we want to convert these parts into something called a solid object. So let's say we want to do that with this plate first. What we're going to do is press Ctrl A and then convert to solid part. So not solid object, solid part. When you click on that, make part solid, no preference, click accept. So what it does, it takes your part and saves it in a special folder. So let me show you guys. Let's say, for example, you have another file and you want to add this part, but you don't want to keep bringing it in every single time. All you have to do is click on Mesh Mix, and that part is going to be in part of the subfolder. You see it has different folders right here, like arms, ears, heads, and it says My Parts. So under My Parts, you'll have all these things in there that you've brought in. So in mine, you'll see that I have this part and some other ones as well. Okay, so this is what you guys are going to do, just so you have it there all the time. So once you do that, what you're going to do is bring in your upper and lower base plates. And you guys know how to do that. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in our lower. So let me actually deselect everything except for our lower. And I'm going to go into Mesh Mix, and I'm going to bring in my lower portion. Now you have to be careful when you're dragging this over. You want to drag it a little bit away from the base plate, because if you bring it in this manner and bring it right over the base plate, what it does, it orients it in this specific way, and you can't move it very well except for on top of the actual base plate. Okay. So bring it in, but bring it in a little bit away from the base plate. So we're going to go into Mesh Mix. We're going to take our part, left click on it, and bring it into about right here. Okay, we need to position it within range at this point. The way that I've modified this, from this point to this point, it's 18 millimeters. Why is this 18 millimeters? Because when we are fabricating our base plates with our wax rims, the wax rims in the interior portion are usually 18 millimeters. And in the posterior, they're about halfway up the retromolar pad. So this is pretty much just a guide for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click W to change the orientation so I can easily move these things. And I'm actually going to drag it so I can position it close to where I need it to be within the range of our mandibular base plate. If you remember from model analysis, the position of our first molar is at the deepest point of our mandible, which is about right here. So the position of the screw should be within range of our first molar. So I'm going to look for a couple of things. So number one, I want to make sure, if when you zoom in, that this part is about right here. So I'm going to move this down, so I'm lining up pretty much exactly with my lowest portion of the interior, which is about right here. So let me lift up a little bit because my angle was a bit askew, so I had it higher. Okay, so now I know that I'm about 18 millimeters from the bottom of the mucobuccal fold. And now I'm going to move that the position for our screw is going to be pretty close to our first molar position, which is about right here. Okay, so that's good. All right, let's activate our upper base and to see how far in we are in accordance to that. Looking pretty good right there. I'm going to drop it down just a little bit this way. Anterior posteriorly, I'm doing pretty good. And I know I'm 18 millimeters here, but we know that this portion has to be about halfway up the retromolar pad. So that tells me we're a little bit askew here. So I'm going to actually turn this down just a little bit. A little bit more. That looks about right. We drop it down just a little bit, so we're maybe not 18 millimeters, maybe a little bit lower. Let me even out this position as well. Okay, that's looking pretty good-ish. From the back, let's go a little bit lower just in case. Because my screw, you know, I can lift up my screw a little bit more. I just don't want it to be too close to my upper plate. Thinking this is pretty good because my retromolar pads are about here. I'm about halfway up. Yeah, this is looking good. Okay, so if this is okay, I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and it will set the position. So a couple of things you don't want to do. You don't want to change the position of your upper and lower base plates because they're pretty much set, right? If you're going to go into transform and move those around, they're no longer are going to line up. Now, we no longer need this pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press select. I'm going to draw a line like this, just so I have my selection, and I'm going to delete it. Okay, clear selection, press I, auto repair all, and we filled that hole because we don't need that pin going all the way down. If that hole is too rough, you can go into sculpt. Let's change the size and smooth it out just so it's not interfering with the patient's tongue. Just like that. Okay. Now we need to make sure and attach our lower plate to the mandibular base plate. How do we do that? So there's actually a couple of different ways you can do it. You can create another solid part that you can bring in all the time, which I've done before. If you look into Mesh Mix, you see I have a couple of different ones in here. Actually, I don't need this one, so I'm going to just discard it. So you can just bring it in and connect it together. And how did I make this part? Well, let me show you. So let me cancel out of this. I'm actually going to delete this one. But if you go to Mesh Mix, well, let me select this first, sorry. Go into Mesh Mix and go into Primitives. There are a couple of different shapes right here, okay? Take a cylinder shape, drag it out. Now it's going to be kind of big, so let's change the size to 4 millimeters right here, okay? So it's going to be a lot smaller. Now let's press T, and we're going to make it a little bit longer and a little bit smaller this way and a little bit smaller this way. Looks about right. And let me just orient it so it's nice and close to where we need it to be. Now it looks still kind of short, so I'm going to make it longer. And I'm going to see how it orients within my position of things. It's looking pretty good. So by clicking different things, you can do different movements to your part. So when you click on a square and you move it this direction, makes it shorter or longer. Same thing with every axis. When you click on that white square and you drag it up and down, actually changes all of the axes, I'm sorry, together. When you click on the triangle, you can move the whole part in every orientation. So right now, this is looking like the kind of size I could probably use fairly easily to mount these things together. So I'm going to press accept. One thing you need to do, you need to convert this into a solid part, because if you don't do that, you're going to have problems attaching things together. So you go to edit and you press make solid, and it just converts everything into a solid part. So go ahead and press accept. Now, if you want to add this to the Mesh Mixer menu into your parts, you can do that as well. All you do is you Control A to select the whole thing and you convert to a solid part. But we don't need to do that because I already have it in there. But I need 3 of these to connect to my base plate and to my lower plate for the tracer. And I want to be bringing it out from the Mesh Mixer menu every single time. How do I do that easily? Well, now I have it selected right here as Mesh S026 solid, a solid part. Mesh S026 in the object browser is the non-solid part, so I don't need that anymore. I'm going to delete it. But this part, I need 3 of them. So all I do is click this double square thingy, and that makes a copy each time. So now I have 1 part and 2 copies. And one is overlaid over the other, that's why you can't see them. But whichever one you select is the one that's going to be visible. So now I'm going to move this part a little bit into this portion right here because it's kind of not all the way in. And I don't want to be causing any problems when I'm trying to do the joining portion of the exercise. So let's press T, and I'm going to make it just a little longer in these directions. Maybe just move it up just a little bit. Okay, that's looking a little bit better. Now you see some of this grayness showing through. Don't worry about it. That's just the copies of the part that you're seeing. So that looks good. Press accept. And now we need to join this portion and this portion together. We're going to join it to this part a little bit later. So what I'm going to do is click on the base, press shift, and click on this part. Now you see that my lower base and solid object, mesh S026 solid, are highlighted. And this menu has popped up. So I'm going to click Boolean Union. And now it kind of presents it as what it's going to look like. When you see this bluish purplish color and this orange one, that means everything's going well. When you see a red one or an arrow pops up, then something is wrong. So go ahead and press accept. And now you've joined these two parts together. You no longer see the mesh S026. All you're seeing is the two copies because this has become part of this file. Okay, so we're going to take the copy, we're going to press T, and we're going to move it to the opposite side of our base. We're going to rotate it. Actually, I'm rotating it in the wrong direction. That makes me look very bright. And move it like this. Honestly, guys, sometimes I have trouble with these arrows and orientations. Just because I'm such a manual technician that I have trouble kind of visualizing things digitally oftentimes. So if you have the same problem, trust me, I feel your pain. Let's make this a little bit longer here. Well, change orientation to the world one. You might, for some reason, doesn't want to do that. Probably because I'm still moving stuff around. And let's make it a little bit shorter. Let's go into this direction. Yeah, that looks good. Let's move it back just a little bit. Now you want to make sure that it's attaching nicely to both sides, and that looks pretty good. So let's press accept. And we're going to attach it to this portion of our base plate. So let's do the same thing. Select this, shift, and then select this, Boolean Union, and then accept. All right, now we have our third part that we're going to move. So I'm going to press T. Well, let's select it. Well, I'm pressing R instead of T, and I can't figure out why it's not working. So let's try to change it to the world orientation. Yeah, that worked this time. Change rotation. Move it in this direction. Let's change rotation again. And go downward. This side is a little bit easier, always. It's usually too long. There we go. Let's change the angle so it mounts up really well. Okay. That's looking pretty good. Let's see if that works. Let's press accept. Select the base, shift and select the rod. Boolean Union. And we're rocking. So now all three rods are attached to the base, but now we have to attach this to this and the three rods. Since the rods are currently, or cylinders, are currently part of the base plate as one file, it's a lot easier to attach it to this as in one movement. So all we do is, this is already clicked, shift and click this one, Boolean Union, accept, and it's all part of one file. We're pretty much done with the lower portion. Let's go ahead and work on the upper. So upper base, let's make it visible. We have everything lined up. What I'm going to do is actually, I kind of rushed a little bit. Let's deselect this and let's bring in our upper portion. So mesh mix, go into my parts and bring in this portion. So this is going to get mounted to the maxillary base. So, but I need to initially make sure that the orientation of this base is in alignment with the lower base. And the way I do that is just simply move it around to make sure that it's on the same plane. And the easiest way I found was to kind of get it lined up like this and just play with the angles just so they're really close to where you need to be. Now, if you're a little bit off, it's not a big deal, guys. You're dealing with soft tissue, and you know that the pin is also can be a little bit modified if you need to be. So, and this is literally just kind of within less than a millimeter, so it's not going to be a big deal at all. But if you want to get a little bit, you know, precise on this, you can get these things positioned pretty well just by utilizing these kind of movements. So you see when I'm going up, it's a little bit angled off, so just change this a little bit, this direction. And a little bit here. And you're pretty much there, the same plane. So press accept. Now I'm going to bring in my upper again. I'm going to deselect my lower. And the way I'm going to move this plate is only going to be in this position. So up and down, forward and back. I'm not going to change angles at all because I already adjusted my angles. So I'm going to press T. I'm going to go down. I'm going to move it here a little bit. I can change this angle. It's not going to create any problems. It's the up and, you know, this angle that you don't want to change. And this angle. This kind of rotation is not going to give you any problems. So what you can actually do is you can actually make the size of this a little bit bigger. Simply by, press accept and press T again, because sometimes these squares kind of go away. But if you kind of drag this direction and this direction, you will change the sizes. Now you see it's coming through here, so it's kind of a problem. You want to make sure it's small enough that it doesn't come through there, or at least move it in the way to where you don't have things showing through. Now if you have little show through like this, it's going to be a bigger problem down the line, because big show through is okay, no show through is okay. If you have little show through, you're going to have a hard time placing these meshes together. So let's go ahead and minimize this a little bit more and move it back just a little bit more as well. And now I think we're good. Let's take a look and see where we're at in relation to, so I'm going to press accept for now. I'm going to activate my lower. I want to make sure there's enough room between these two portions for me to adjust my screw up and down. And it looks like we have plenty of room here. So let's deactivate the lower part. And now I have to join my upper and lower bases together. I mean, not upper and lower bases. I have to join my upper Gothic arch tracing plate and my upper base plate together. So the way I do it, I'm going to select this, Shift, select this, Boolean Union, accept, and we are done. And if you look right here, now we have our top and our bottom ready to go. The only thing we need to do now before exporting this file is to check if we have any errors. So on the upper, you go into Analysis, Inspector, and we have one little error right there, Auto Repair All. So that's fixed. Then Done. And Analysis, Inspector. Doesn't look like we have anything, so press Done. And we can export these two things fairly easily. So simply each one, I recommend you export each one individually, don't join these files together. So File Export, and you create the name for your file. Something like a lower Gothic arch tracer works fairly well, or an upper Gothic arch tracer, depending which file you're using. Go ahead and get this created. Go ahead and save the files. get them submitted for grading. And if you want, you can go ahead and print these. So the only thing you don't have for this file right now, let me press cancel. The only thing you don't have for this file right now is the screw. So you just need to bring that into your printing slicing software and get that aligned as well, because you don't utilize the screw to get attached to either one of these base plates. So hopefully I have explained this fairly well for you guys. And if you have any problems, please don't hesitate to let me know, and I'll make sure to help you out with this particular assignment. And as always, good luck.